ActionSA has rejected media reports that party leader Herman Mashaba bribed political analyst and author Prince Mashele. It's alleged that Mashaba paid Mashele 12.5 million rand to write the ActionSA leader's biography titled The Outsider. ActionSA national spokesperson Michael Beaumont has disputed the reports, saying the project was initiated 2 years ago before the launch of the party. He says back in 2018, Mashele approached Mashaba when he was the mayor of Johannesburg with a plan to write the book. So perhaps for more on this, we're going to be joined here in studio by political strategist and researcher, as well as member of ActionSA, Mr. Brutus Malada. Good afternoon. Thanks for your time with us here on the SABC.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure for me to be here.
All right. So in lieu of what is transpiring, I think the question I'd like to start off with, when was the last time you spoke to Herman Mashaba?
Well, I spoke to Herman Mashaba. I tried to call him last week when I saw an interview of Prince Mashele. I reached out to Herman. I called him, and he sent me a message to say I'm abroad. And then I wrote a message and I said, I am aggrieved by what has happened in the book, and I would like, this is a courtesy call, to let you know about the steps that I'm going to take.
And since then, has he come out to respond to you in any way? Has Jonathan Bull Publishers also issued anything? I mean, we heard from Michael Beaumont earlier on that he's rubbished those claims.
Well, what I'm aware of is that I wrote a letter to Jonathan Bull alerting them of the concerns that I had. My concerns related to four things. One, I considered a serious injustice on what has happened. I called it for what it was, which is academic thuggery. So Prince failed to acknowledge my role in the book. The second issue was the issue of ethical breaches. That I felt that Jonathan Bull, as a reputable publisher, they may have been misled into thinking that this is indeed an unauthorized biography. So I wrote to alert them to say, I do not think that this is an unauthorized biography for the following reasons. That first, Mashaba funded the project. Secondly, there were instances in which, in fact, Mashaba gave permission for us to write the book, and he also funded the book. Thirdly, there were instances in which we were engaging with Mr. Mashaba on a regular basis, and we will get comments from him as to what we can include. Of course, some of those comments we didn't take into consideration. But any book in which its subject comments to it, gives permission and funds it, cannot be called an unauthorized biography. The fourth thing was the issue of hypocrisy. Because let me firstly deal with this one, that with regard to ethical breaches. You see, you cannot get involved in aiding and supporting the subject that you're writing about, and then you go and pretend to be a neutral person. I felt that Prince owed the public to disclose his relationship with Mashaba as well as his involvement in ActionSA. Fred Kumalo called it for what it is, that Prince is embedded. So this links to the fourth point that I wanted to make, which is about hypocrisy. You cannot criticize other intellectuals about them being in the pockets of politicians. You go and get money to do a book which is supposed to be independent, and then you don't disclose about it. So it was really an ethical breach on the part of Prince, and it was hypocrisy of the highest order.
All right, so thank you for outlining those concerns. We'll unpack that a little later. I just want to go back to the beginning, when you started writing the book. Walk us through how that process came about. You're obviously part of writing the biography from the start, and then what transpired from there?
Okay, this is what happened. Prince approached me. He came to my place in Midrand, and he said, look, I've got an idea to write a book. He didn't even have Mashaba's numbers. He asked me to get Mashaba's numbers. I got Mashaba's numbers, and Prince called Mashaba after we brainstormed this idea of the book. And then he approached Mr. Mashaba, and he said, to Mr. Mashaba, I've got an idea to write the book. Why did he go to him? You can write a biography without approaching the person if it is unauthorized.
Yes.
We've got instances, or we have got examples of many books that have been written without the subject knowing or without their permission. So he went to seek the permission and to seek assistance. Financial aid came in. So that was the process. Prince approached me on the basis of the following reasons. One, I've got a history of working with Prince. We are friends. We were friends for more than 20 years. So we have learned to work together, and we knew each other's writing styles. Secondly, I had the advantage as a researcher that I had worked in the city of Johannesburg when Herman Mashaba was the mayor. So I knew, I had intimate knowledge of the things that Mr. Mashaba introduced when he was the mayor. So it would be easy for me to gain access. I even knew the kind of people or senior officials that would actually share some of the information that we needed. So I had that advantage, which is why Prince approached me to be a researcher in the project. So the process was, we would go and interview Mr. Mashaba. I would then listen to these recordings that we've done, the notes that I've done,
yes,
read my own literature, and frame the chapter. Once I frame the chapter, I send it to Prince. And then Prince will then work through it and produce the final draft. I can tell you that 80% of the chapters in that book were their origin in terms of the first drafts were actually written by myself. So I feel very aggrieved that Prince has committed academic thuggery of failing to acknowledge my work. He is actually trying to say, to rub off my existence for the past 3 years. And it's really unfair, it's unethical, it is not done in academics.
So Brutus, what are you seeking then at this point? Based on the concerns that you highlighted, I'm trying to understand whether the gripe is the amount you were paid or the fact that you were not given the credit that's due. To help us understand
there is no dispute around the amount that was paid. Okay. We agreed. And Prince was honorable enough to pay me what we agreed.
Okay.
And Mr. Mashaba is an honorable man. He stuck to the agreement. There was never a point in which we had to follow up about payments. Payments were made on time. But where the problem is with me is, you can't have me get involved for 3 years, write substantively, contribute substantively, dedicate my time and effort and intellect in framing the book, and then you fail to acknowledge me. There is no dispute about who the author is, but it is only fair that if you write an academic work and you produce it, acknowledge those who contributed to it. To then peddle this book as a book that you produced without any assistance from anyone, it is lies. So that is why I'm saying there is great deception here in this book.
So the facts that come through in the book, you're not disputing whether that's true or not.
No. There is no dispute about that. In fact, I'm very proud about the contribution that I made in the book. What I sought, the relief that I sought when I wrote to Jonathan Ball, I said, one, this book it is called unauthorized and it is not true. Yes. And I gave them the reasons. I said, in view of these reasons, please withdraw the book and publish it as authorized. And I said, make sure that there is an acknowledgement of my work, because I worked for 3 years in the book. And the Jonathan Ball has now considered that indeed Prince did not disclose that the book was actually funded by its own subject. And they said in the Sunday Times, I think in other publications that went out yesterday, they considered that if they had known, they would not have published the book. So they say this is a serious material issue of non-disclosure on the part of the author. So it's very clear that Prince lied. That is why I'm saying it's deception. He deceived the publishers and he deceived the public. So this book is authorized.
Brutus, just in the interest of time, in conclusion, election season's around the corner. Official campaigning kicks off 6 months prior to that. Is this not going to impact or tarnish the ActionSA leaders' reputation at this point? Just given the timing of what you also now alluding to? This
story, honestly, to drag Mr. Mashaba into it, it's people who are not informed. The issue here is that Mr. Mashaba honored the agreement. There is nothing wrong with Mr. Mashaba. He's a man of integrity. Okay. The person who has been dishonorable in this is Prince, because he went to the publishers. He didn't tell them that this book is supposed to be an authorized biography. Okay. He wanted the book to appear as unauthorized. So you can't have your cake and eat it. The other thing for me is that, having worked in a project like this, if I had not raised this issue and this matter comes up 10 years later, I will also be guilty of aiding this lie, of perpetuating this lie.
Okay.
Because if someone was to find out later, after 10 years, after the book has been published, and say, Brutus, you were part of this, we found out that you were part of it, you were paid 3 million rand. Why didn't you tell that this book was a deception? My own integrity will be on the line. So I am doing this for my own integrity. And I take exception to what Michael Bowman has said. And I must say, he himself is contradicting himself. He can't say the book was commissioned. He can't also say the subject of the book was entitled. He is actually agreeing with me that the book was authorized. But to actually question my integrity and say, I'm raising this now. One, I was not invited to the book launch. I was not invited to the book launch. Two, my work ended at the third year. Mm-hmm. So the last leg between the publisher and Prince was between them. It did not involve me. My research work was done. But Prince, I had a conversation with Prince about whether this book should be authorized or unauthorized. And I did raise these concerns with him, and he ruled me out. What did he want to achieve? He wanted to still maintain this independence on the one hand, and writing this book so that it sells. But it's unfair because he is jeopardizing the very same project that was worth doing.
Brutus, so obviously we believe in right of reply. So you've stated your case. Thank you very much for joining us and for outlining your version of events. Let's see what comes from this, perhaps a response from Prince Mashele at this point. But thank you for joining us here on the SABC and for your time with us here against Brutus Malada is a political strategist and researcher.